like tons of time. They're going to take the 101. It's compromised.
What was your question? You were going to ask me a question.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't want to.
what in regards to motivation? I mean, motivating someone to do exercise or something that typically would be moving or anything like that. Have you seen anything about that? Because I've seen like things like, you know, typical things like, oh, take you out to dinner, or it's going to save you money in the long run, or make you feel good about yourself.
And especially when you're driving.
As Jerry was saying,
Although
in
the
colloquial,
light feels so
there's a
good.
literature
You get
in
up, you
health
get a drink, and
psychology
you're
about
going down.
treatment adherence, which gets into some of those kind of questions. And then in social psych, there's a literature about how you frame messages to get people to believe. Some of which is focused on health messages and prevention kinds of issues. And then there's a guy here who does work on framing messages about healthy sexual behavior and AIDS prevention.
Oh, yeah. You pay.
And actually, I mean, the simple answer is that positive messages tend to work better than negative ones.
Yeah.
Because the outcome of negative messages tends to be
Small amount of
because we tend to move to
my class
try to scare people into
exactly
good
that
health
time
behavior.
before that time I can't take
But
it.
it's the logical solution is if the message is scary, you don't listen to the message.
Or buses for like 2.5 hours to get home. So.
But then there's also more subtleties of how to frame a positive message, and not all positive messages work. There's some that work better than others, and it's a fairly complicated nuance.
Transportation here is undergrad. It was just convenient. There's a bus.
One, actually, a couple of reactions to the content of this message today. I thought one, first of all, unfortunately, I think for a lot of things, you just tend to be right. But a lot of the stuff that you can do to get people to do stuff that would work is intensive and more expensive. Unfortunately, it tends to treat a lot of psychological conditions. Although sometimes not as expensive as medical. I know that actually his conclusion, as I understood it, was actually kind of different than the title of the talk. He talked about, his title had to do with self-regulation. And it seemed to be that actually his evidence pointed in the direction that you were more likely to be successful if you turned around.
Yeah.
Like that. So if you didn't have to self-manage your behavior because you got like the implant.
Oh yeah.
Or you took pills instead of having the diet. So I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, because I thought at the end that there was a paper on hypertension labeling effects, and that if you tell somebody they have hypertension when in fact they don't, that they rate their health as being worse.
Yeah.
And so if you had everybody going in to get screened and giving them medication that you know they're not going to take, they're actually compromising their health rate, by having better medical care. If it doesn't confer treatment, then
there are occasional studies too that actually access to treatment doesn't result in better health outcomes.
Yeah.
But I never actually read the paper. It's another one of my NPR stories. But some years ago, they did a story on a Veterans Affairs hospital study where they looked at differential access to cardiac treatment for black and white veterans. And the black veterans had less access to cardiac care than they lived longer.
I think there's been some mammography studies that have been a little bit, not all treatment, sometimes treatments aren't really, or screening even.
Doesn't always have the effects that you expect or hope for. It didn't struck me that I almost asked him this, and I said it was just too tangential, and I was probably focusing in on it as I did this lecture. But one of his hypertension prevalence slides over time, it seemed to me had like a huge time effect in it. Then at about 1998, both, he was focused on the educational differential, which
Yeah.
I thought was a little tangential. But in about 1998, both educational levels jumped about 10 percentage points from like,
It's a really sharp rise.
yeah.
I mean, the uneducated was already high, but the two that were educated
But it was,
way up.
but it was also, it was like, it looked to me like it was also very discrete. That like, it was kind of flat before that,
Yeah.
and it was flat after that. And for some reason, like between 96 and 98, both lines jump up.
Yeah.
So we started letting him into like hydrogen and oil.
Well, yeah, it's just, I have no idea what, I was trying to think if I could think of anything. Was that when they started putting bacon on cheeseburgers?
They got that
So serving doubles.
Where we get some of these ideas.
It could be a measurement, an instrument error.
Yeah.
Well, in the sense that sometimes, like, if they change, like you were talking about, if you change instruments, so if you're measuring with a manual blood pressure, and then maybe they switched in 98 to being
And it's
electric.
also like if you don't know what you're doing with those things, I mean, like if I put my arm like this and you take my blood pressure measurement,
Yeah.
it's going to be 10 to 20% higher. Whereas if I'm relaxing, it's going to be lower. It also depends on which arm, depends on
Usually
how
they're
good.
Most of them be monitoring techniques.
They're
You
good
would
at
hope so.
technique, but I would imagine that they changed instruments. And then if you looked at that study, it would have been down
Yeah.
saying you changed.
And you have to keep it calibrated too. Not
Surely
everyone
they
knows
would
how to
notice it.
calibrate
The other
it.
thing that just crossed my mind as we're talking about this is somewhere around there we lowered the what was considered hypertension.
Oh, well, that's what that paper was talking about when they were, that's when I think that paper came out, was that they were talking about labeling people as pre-hypertensive and saying like,
They actually like dropped, because for a long time it was like systolic was like 140, and then at some point in the last decade or so we dropped it to like 120 or something.
yeah.
And I know like on cholesterol, I think I've had the same cholesterol I've always had, but I think I now have high cholesterol. Because the level is, cutoff level is set low.
Well, I think it's shown that like cholesterol, the more you lower it, and there's no point in time where less is more. That you can the more you lower cholesterol at almost any level, the better health benefits, or the less risk of disease that you have. So there's really no like high criteria that really puts you at a greater risk.
Is it all disease or cardiac disease? Or?
I think it was just looking at heart disease, at cardiovascular disease. And now I read that really 2
Why
years
do they
ago.
have a disclaimer on all the statin ads that says that cholesterol is not linked to like heart attack and stroke?
Well, not independently, but I think that it clusters with.
It's a factor, but it's not like you have
Yeah,
high
I
cholesterol,
don't
so you're
think,
going to die of a
like,
heart
if you
attack
have high
next week.
cholesterol or
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there have been quite a few intervention trials that have shown that statin drugs. I don't know that. I mean,
That's what I've looked at in like ages and ages.
yeah.
I knew somebody like a decade or so ago that I talked to when I was doing some hypertension stuff with caregivers that said that at that point that the best predictions was actually like the number of risk factors that you had,
Yeah.
but that any one risk factor really wasn't a very good predictor at all.
I think that's really what it is that it has to be like cholesterol, blood pressure, body mass, like all of these things.
Yeah.
I looked at some MD that was doing a job talk here several years ago that was actually arguing against statins. I think she thought they were dangerous for women. She thought there was a huge gender difference. And she also was arguing against them as being... She had all these studies that suggested that people on statins were angry, including violent. That the rates of hostility and actual violence is... I don't know if
Because
this
they're
is...
not exercising and then they have
See,
to
if they
die.
exercise, yeah, then they'd be happy. I think in Legally Blonde, what was it? Yeah, like endorsing, or exercise releases endorphins,
Yeah.
and people with high endorphins don't kill their husbands. It was from Legally Blonde. I don't know why. I don't know why I know that.
Oh
swear to God,
yeah,
don't
I
know why
forgot
know
where that was from too.
It's from Legally Blonde.
Never watched the movie.
That's like a direct quote, but where?
It's actually kind of funny. That was all filmed like here in CSUN. where I graduated is also where Elle Woods